Hi, my name is Todd Vickers, and this is a project from my first HTML class. I created a website based on my satellite company, All American Satellite. I began in '96 by selling and installing PrimeStar. I moved on to include DirecTV and Dish Network, and ultimately DirectWay when it became available. It's a high-speed internet service that I was really excited about. And on the home page you can see a picture of the dish and the modem, and that's me in my truck and my really cool sign. And yeah, I was a little chunky back in those days, but I have since slimmed down to a very svelte 200 pounds. Let's take a look at our features page. The features, kind of boring. I'd like the picture in the background. I use this because it's one of the biggest jobs I ever did. This is a very well-to-do customer who lived in Chesterfield, and a couple of companies had already come out there and just couldn't do the job for whatever reason, and it was a big job. He called me, and I went out and did a site survey and showed him, what could be done and how much it would cost, because this was well beyond our standard installation. And as you can see, he's pretty rich, so he didn't mind paying, and he needed high-speed internet service. So I mounted the dish to the roof and had to run a cable through the attic, and fortunately he had a conduit that ran from the attic all the way down to the crawl space, because I had to run it down there to ground it to their utility ground. But then I had to come all the way back up from the crawl space through that same conduit to their computer room on the top floor. And it was an all-day sucker, but we got her done. Now let's look at our installation options. Um, DirectWay comes with a free standard installation, which includes a wall mount, a roof mount, or a deck mount, as you see here. Now with the wall mount, the key is to find the studs in the wall and fasten each leg of the tripod to those studs. Get your mast perfectly plumb, mount your dish, and align it. Now aligning a DirectWay dish is a little trickier than aligning a TV dish, because you're also transmitting a signal. So you've got to maximize your copolarization and minimize your cross-polarization. Cross-polarization is what can affect other satellite communications. Now on the roof mount, the key is to locate the joists in the roof and fasten each leg of the tripod to those joists. And you're going to be drilling a hole and setting a lag bolt, so you have to use roof cement to prevent any leakage. Very important. And again, get your mast perfectly plumb, align your dish, run your cable. The deck mount you see here is a little unusual. The deck is elevated, so I was able to use it. We have to keep the dish at least 6 feet above ground, because it emits transmits a microwave signal, and we can't have kids walking in front of it. Now in the next picture you see a ground mount. We use a galvanized steel pole. It's a Schedule 40, 9-foot section buried 3 feet deep, and extends up 6 feet to keep it in compliance, so we keep the transmitter at least 6 feet off the ground, and that is done for an additional charge. Now this is called a sidewalk bore. This is something I run into occasionally when I've got to do a ground mount and there's a sidewalk between the pole and the house. And instead of busting up the sidewalk, I can just basically tunnel underneath it. I've got to dig a trench anyway, so I just trench right up the sidewalk, and in this case I just use my drill to tunnel underneath it and run the cable underneath. This is a picture of a dish that gets not only internet service but TV service. This attachment here is a LNB, a low noise block. That's basically your feed horn that collects the signal after it bounces off the dish. And the key is the alignment. It works on the same principle as a basketball goal. If you can get the signal to bounce off the backboard at the correct angle, it goes into the goal. So what you see here is a properly aligned dish that gets internet service from one satellite and gets TV service from yet another satellite in one fixed position. This service here is called a wall fish, where we can crawl underneath the house and run the cable up inside the wall. It's just a matter of locating the wall and locating the studs, drilling up in between the studs, feeding the cable up into the wall, and connecting it to a nice neat wall plate. And this last one here is a typical commercial job where you see it mounted to a non-penetrating roof mount. The roof is flat, and we don't want to drill into it, so we can use weight to hold it in place with these cinder blocks. Now let's look at my compare page, give you an idea of what I see when I go out on service calls. On the left here you see really just no wire management at all. The cable is left laying on the ground, slung over the spigot, and a ground wire that just literally was shoved into the ground. It wasn't connected to anything. And I see that a lot. most of the installs that I did service work on were not properly grounded, or not grounded at all. The National Electrical Code requires that they be grounded. And a lot of installers will tell you they don't believe in grounding, or it's more likely to get hit by lightning if you ground it. Well, no, sorry. You can't predict where lightning's going to strike. But grounding is not that difficult. You look for the electric meter and you will find a ground wire that goes from that electric meter to a ground rod. And you basically connect your ground wire to that ground wire with a split bolt. It's very important to use conduit to protect your cable from the weed whacker, and do your cabling very neatly, and use weather protection on your connectors. Again, in this next one we see very just horrible wire management. It's hideous. The reason you see 4 cables and 2 ground blocks is because this customer has DirectWay and DirecTV, same as this customer here, only it's just done a whole lot neater. You'll see 1 ground block, and I color code my DirectWay cables because you've got a receive signal, receive cable, and a transmit cable, and it's important to have those color coded when you're installing and if you're doing any testing or troubleshooting. In this next picture you see a really cheap way of doing a ground mount. This guy bought a fence pole at Home Depot for $8, and it's got the right outer circumference so it fits, but it's very flimsy. It's only 8 feet long. It needs to be 9 feet long so that it can be posted 3 feet deep. And he used maybe 20 pounds of concrete. I was able to pull that thing out of the ground with my bare hands. And this is what a proper ground mount should look like here. This is a commercial install that was done in a big hurry. Instead of cinder blocks, he threw a couple of bags of concrete on it. Didn't even finish bolting it together. The mast where it fastens to the roof mount is missing some bolts, so this one wobbled every time the wind blew and the customer would lose their signal. So it was pretty easy to figure out what was wrong and how to fix it. Here's an example of an installer who just either didn't know how to do a wall fish or didn't care to. You can do a wall fish from the attic or the crawl space depending on the situation. It's just a matter of locating the wall and the studs and drilling into the wall, dropping your cable in and fishing it down the wall and fastening it to a wall plate like you see over here on the right. This is something I ran into occasionally. On the bottom left here was a installer didn't have enough cable to reach the house. He had like 2 sets of cable that were about 40 feet long when he needed 80 feet of cable, so he just spliced them together and buried the splice. Well, there's no weather protection, nothing protecting those connectors at all. It was just buried in the ground and got wet and shorted out. And it was pretty easy to find because when I tested the cable, I knew what I was going to find. I pulled it up out of the cable, out of the ground, and I found the splice, and that's exactly what I knew I would find. So I respliced it and put weather protection over it and fastened it just inside these garden logs inside the flower bed where it wouldn't be seen. I also have an order form so a customer can go online and even place an order. And I did have my own website when I was in business. I used a product called Website in a Box, and it was pretty cool. I was able to create a website just using their templates, and they even included the hosting with their product. And the cool thing was that DirectWay had a link on their page for customers to find a local dealer so that they didn't have to order through DirectWay. They could find a local dealer and order that way, and that worked out great for me. They could click on that link, type in their zip code, and see me along with my competitors in my area. But they would not only see my name and my phone number, they would also see that I had my own website, and they could see for themselves photos like you saw on my website there of my work, of me, of my truck, and they can see that I am professional and I take my job very seriously. And that worked out great. I got a lot of sales that way, but eventually DirectWay made the decision to remove that link from their website so that when customers ordered, they ordered strictly from DirectWay. And I did continue to get installation work from them, but I was no longer earning the sales commissions that I had. So that hurt me a little, but I appreciated it while it was there. And that concludes it. Thank you very much.